From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Happy Thursday and welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. My name is James Azar. I'm a Chief Information Security Officer and host of the podcast. Thank you all for tuning in to episode 915. I actually get the number right this morning. It's a lot of episodes. So yesterday I got it mixed up a little bit, but I apologize for that. We've got a packed show for all of y'all today. A lot to talk about this Thursday as we get ready for Memorial Weekend, and a very, very significant weekend for many, many Americans. Monday's show will be half cyber and then half very much around Memorial Day and what that actually means in our country. Oftentimes we lose focus and we think of Memorial Weekend as being a day off and to barbecue and celebrate, which it is. It definitely has that meaning, but it has a deeper meaning than anything else. It's the day we remember the brave men and women who made and paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country. And so that's what Monday will be a little bit about on the show here. So again, just kind of keeping that in mind. We're live on your favorite social media platforms. And if you're listening, we're on your favorite podcast listening platform. Join me for a coffee cup cheers this morning. I've got my double espresso ready to rock and roll. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. Brilliant. Let's get into a data breach at Kettering Health, which is a non-profit organization that manages emergency centers in around 120 outpatient facilities across Western Ohio. It employs around 15,000 people, including more than 1,800 physicians. Since I believe it's Tuesday, May 20th, so just a few days ago, they've suffered a debilitating cyber attack that really caused a system-wide technology outage. Now, the cyber attack is really related to ransomware. Kettering Health also confirmed that scammers impersonating Kettering Health employees call patients and request credit card payments for medical expenses. While the scam calls are not yet linked to the attack, patients are advised to report them to law enforcement. The outage is linked to a new ransomware group, kind of new. They're called Interlock Ransomware. Cyber threat intelligence company Prodaft telling Bleepy Computer that the threat actors tracked as Nefarious Mantis, part of the Interlock cluster, and they're behind the breach. Nefarious Mantis is known for previously targeting healthcare and biotechnology organizations and deploying the Interlock RAT for internal reconnaissance and maintaining control over the victim's network. In several cases, this activity led to the deployment of the Interlock ransomware, resulting in operational disruption and potential data loss. The network was compromised, and we've secured your most vital files, according to the ransom note. So Kettering Health didn't share additional information regarding the incident as of yet. Here's why this definitely matters, and I'll tell you. There's an aspect to these ransomware attacks on healthcare facilities. Now, this didn't impact life-saving medicine, and it rarely does. It rarely does. I have a friend of mine who's a doctor. She's a great doctor, and I was asking her about, kind of cyber at the hospital and cyber attacks, and she explained in a lot of detail that the life-saving comes from the doctor's knowledge and the nurse's knowledge, and that internal knowledge is never really trusted into a computer. Now, the billing, the records, that's different. She goes, but they've got methods around it as well. So there's that aspect to it. But these attacks and these continued cyber attacks on hospitals just show you what low-hanging fruit healthcare facilities are and how much attention they do require from a cybersecurity perspective, and something we ought to keep in mind. We're going to head over the pond here to Ukraine and Russia, and the war there doesn't seem to be ending. And I think a lot of people underestimated or overestimated just exactly how deep this conflict is rooted in principle and pride, because it is rooted in both. And so Russia, for their end, since the beginning of the war, have been doing an immaculate job, really hats off to the Russians, for the types of cyber attacks they've launched against the Ukraine, from wiper malware to tracking this new campaign by Fancy Bear, APT-28, is tracking and targeting the entire supply chain line to Ukraine, from defense and transportation to IT services to air traffic to maritime. They've targeted 12 different European countries and the US. They've also been tracking the movement of materials into the Ukraine by compromising access to private cameras installed in key locations. A joint advisory from 21 intelligence and cybersecurity agencies in nearly a dozen countries are sharing the TTPs of Fancy Bear. The report notes that since 2022, Fancy Bear employs tactics like password spraying, spear phishing, and Microsoft Exchange vulnerability exploits to compromise organizations. They've targeted organizations in the United States, Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, France, Germany, Greece, Italy, Moldova, Netherlands, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and the Ukraine. They've used a whole bunch of techniques. Let's get to the CVE ones, because the top three, the credentials, the spear phishing, for credentials, and malware, fairly standard. But the exploitation of the Outlook NTLM vulnerability, that's CVE 2023 2339 or 7. They've also leveraged additional vulnerabilities in the Roundcube open source webmail software. Those are CVEs 2020 12641 35730 and CVE 2021 44026. They've also exploited the WinRAR vulnerability, CVE 2023 38831, to hide the origins of the attacks, direct communications to compromised SOHO devices that are within proximity to the target. Again, looking for places where you wouldn't have monitoring. The extent of these attacks just tells you how well the GRU is really going after this. And we're going to get into more, because there's an effect to this report, but we'll get to that here in just a minute, that has to do with that. And they're doing a lot of living off the land types of attacks as well. And again, the Russians are very good at this kind of stuff. Excellent at this kind of stuff. Well, this is now leading to a whole new round of sanctions targeting individuals and entities linked to Russia's hybrid warfare efforts. This includes disinformation, sabotage, and espionage campaigns against Europe and even Africa. Among those sanctions are members of the Russian military intelligence unit, the GRU, as well as individuals linked to promoting Kremlin and narratives through social media campaigns. The EU has also targeted companies providing critical support to these activities, including web hosting services and even GPS jamming equipment. Part of the round of sanctions is a part of a broader European strategy to counter Russia's ongoing hybrid warfare activities. A lot of those lead to actual like physical activities within those nations. So, look, do I believe the EU has any sort of grandstanding here when it comes to sanctions? No. Are these going to deter Russia from doing anything? They might hurt Russia a little bit, but at the end of the day, they're hurting individuals within Russia, and the country is already so self-sufficient that this doesn't even matter at all. We'll continue with what China is doing with a new Chinese-backed intelligence operation, where they're using fake employment sites and social media ads to recruit laid-off federal workers as part of a greater espionage campaign to get more and gather more intelligence on the U.S., including some sensitive information related to U.S. national security and corporate interest. With the mass layoffs happening right now at the federal side, Max Lesser, the senior analyst on emerging threats at the FDD Center on Cyber and Technology and Innovation, says to Cybersecurity Dive that historically China's effort to recruit current and former government employees typically focuses on people with access to sensitive information. However, even a government employee's resume may provide valuable unclassified information to the PRC about the inner workings of the U.S. government. This happened before, back in 2018, where a Singaporean national used LinkedIn and a fake consulting company to try and recruit American military and other sensitive ex-federal workers. He received more than 400 resumes. Jun Win Yao was later sentenced to 14 months in prison for that, and now the U.S. is trying to deter that as well. Between December of 2024 and March, all 5 domains that were hosted around this were owned by Tencent. So they're outlining a network of 5 different companies, including one internet service provider and 4 other firms that are either headhunter or consulting firms based in the US, Singapore, and Japan. The companies are Sameo Intelligence, Dust Strategy or Dust Strategy, Rivermerge Strategies, and Tusbesa Insights and WaveMax Innovation. According to the report, some of these are real companies based in China with further affiliations, and that's how they're trying to do it. So something to keep in mind if you're a federal worker or know someone who is. who's been laid off, to keep an attention on that. Microsoft and the global law enforcement agencies announced the takedown finally of the Lumma stealer malware operation, seizing over 2,300 domains that formed the command and control backbone and blocking dark web markets that offered it for rent. The strike, powered by a court order in the US and executed with Europol and Japan's Cybercrime Control Center, effectively destroys the infrastructure that led the info stealer vacuum up passwords, credit card numbers, and even crypto wallet keys for cyber criminals. Along with the domain seizures, the Justice Department also took down their central control panel, while Europol and JC3 chased residual servers in Europe and Asia. Microsoft said its internal digital crimes unit had synced hold more than 1,300 of the captured domains, rerouting victims to safe servers so defenders can study traffic patterns and disinfect machines. So Lumma stealer gone there as well. A hacking group with an apparent access to commercial domain name systems archiving service is now on the hunt for misconfigured records of some high reputation organizations in order to blast out links to scammy domains. The threat actors, tracked by Infoblox as Hazy Hawk, came to the attention after a domain belonging to the U.S. Center for Disease Control, the CDC, in February was suddenly hosting dozens of URLs that referenced adult pornography. Hazy Hawk is engaged in unusual work of looking for misconfigured DNS records that point to abandoned cloud resources like S3 buckets and Azure endpoints, and then they use those major domains in order to reroute to other domains. So if you have kind of old systems, now would be the time to try to clean that up as well. And that's something really, really important. A lot of times we build in our organizations, units kind of go dormant. These servers, these systems, these endpoints, no one really takes them officially, decommissions them, and then these threat actors come in and try to utilize them for their own malicious activities. So you want to make sure that you're cleaning house after something is done with. We'll get to some major vulnerabilities here on today's show. A critical vulnerability in the Versa Concerto that are still unpatched would allow remote attackers to bypass authentication and execute arbitrary code on the systems. Versa Concerto is a centralized management and orchestration platform for Versa Networks, SD-WAN, and SASE solutions. It's used largely by large enterprises managing complex WAN environments, telecom operators providing managed SD-WAN and SASE services to customers, government agencies that need secure, policy-driven network segmentation. The CVEs discovered are 2025-34027 with a perfect CVSS score of a perfect 10 here. This is a URL decoding inconsistency that allows an attacker to bypass authentication and access a file upload endpoint. CVE 2025-34026 has a 9.2 severity score, and that's an improper reliance on the XReal IP header that would let attacker bypass access controls to sensitive Spring Boot actuator endpoints, and it's suppressing the header via a terrific proxy trick. Attackers can extract credentials and even session tokens. And finally, CVE 2025-34025 has a CVSS score of 8.6, and that's a misconfigured Dogger setup that exposes host binaries to container rights. Attackers can override the binary like test with a reverse shell script, which is then executed by a host cron job, resulting in a full host compromise. So on March 20th, Versa Network indicated that the hotfix would become available. On April 7th, they did become available. They had a 90-day product, but it's now being actively exploited, so you want to make sure you get that patched up. Cisco publishing 10 security advisories detailing over a dozen vulnerabilities across their products, including 2 high-severity flaws in its identity services engine and unified intelligence center. The ICE bug, the identity services engine, is CV 2025-20152 and impacts the radius message processing feature that could be exploited remotely without authentication, and it would cause the ICE to reload, leading to a denial of service condition. And the networking giant also resolved the high-severity issue in Unified Intelligence Center, that's CV 2025-20113, that would allow an authenticated attacker to elevate their privileges to those of an admin for a limited set of functions on a vulnerable system. You want to make sure you get those patched up ASAP. GitLab and Adelesion this week announcing releases of patches for more than a dozen vulnerabilities. Adelesion released Adelesion, I don't know, whatever. 8 advisories detailing 6 high severity flaws in Bamboo, Confluence, Fisheye, Cubicle, and Jira. The defects were identified in third-party dependencies and could lead to a denial of service condition or elevation of privileges. GitLab also announcing 10 bug fixes affecting GitLab Community and Enterprise Edition. The most important is CVE 2025-090903, a high severity issue that could be exploited by authenticated attackers to cause a denial of service condition by exhausting server resources. Those were fixed in versions at 17.10.7, 17.11.3, and 18.0.1. And you want to make sure you get those patched up as soon as humanly possible. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. We're gone tomorrow. Have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern. Make sure to check out CyberHubPodcast.com for all the latest and greatest content we have, including our Saturday articles, which are absolutely available there for you. So go subscribe. You get all of that content for free, including a summary of the show in your inbox every single day. Until then, have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.